Good morning and welcome back to the Capitol. I'm State Senator Andrew Chesney, and joining me this morning is Senator Dave Severson, Leader and Representative John Cabello, and Representative Joe Sosnowski. In November, you may recall that Governor Pritzker announced an additional $160 million to combat the migrant crisis. In fact, it is certainly a crisis. This is on top of the $478 million that the Democrats have already allocated to address this issue. Of the $160 million, $30 million was to take a large intake center and a welcome center to coordinate with the newly arrived migrants. We have $65 million that was allocated to the city of Chicago to open up climate-controlled shelters. That actually equates to address 2,000 migrants, equates to about $32,500 per migrant for just 6 months. $65 million to address the wraparound services to make sure that the migrants are comfortable during their time here in Illinois. We had an experience in the Rockford and the Greater State Line area on New Year's Eve when 355 migrants arrived in the Chicago-Rockford International Airport. This plane arrived with little notice, and local officials were scrambling to address the issue. But they did so very well. We commend the great efforts of Winnebago County Sheriff Gary Caruana and his team for addressing the issue with the final destination of what we believe to be is Chicago. The migrant crisis in the Rockford area created a lot of panic, a lot of confusion, and opened up a lot of questions that me and my colleagues want to try to address today. We've had calls from superintendents, we've seen newsletters from our superintendents that have spoke directly to the migrant and the migrant crisis in our schools and how the teachers and the administration has to deal with this crisis. Governor Pritzker and his allies in the General Assembly, Mayor Johnson, have rolled out the red carpet for the migrants. And so it's no surprise why a destination like Illinois would be of interest to them. We've passed laws like the Trust Act that make it almost impossible for local law enforcement to communicate with federal authorities. They can't even talk to them. Governor Pritzker and the Democrats have provided free health care for undocumented folks that are aged 52 and plus. And there's also debates that will probably be happening in the legislature this year to discuss offering free health care for all. State of Illinois, we offer driver's license for immigrants and migrants, free legal representation. We offer it all. Our staff and I are working on a legislative package with Senator Severson, Sosnowski, Representative Sosnowski, and Cabello to try to address this issue because it really is a big issue. And here are some of the highlights of what we want to address today. We want to reverse the Trust Act so that local law enforcement can have conversations with federal authorities. We want to eliminate free health care for illegal immigrants. The best health care in the state of Illinois that J.B. Pritzker delivers is for illegal immigrants and also migrants after they stay past their 180 days. And we also need to focus on how to move folks along. You know, there's California, New York, and other states that may want to offer different services than the state of Illinois. You know, the Trust Act is common sense, and so for those that have been critics and suggest that migrants are not illegal immigrants, I think it's also worth noting that about 80% of the applications are going to be rejected. About 80%, that's the average. And when those 80% of folks are rejected, I don't think that many folks believe that they're going to travel back to their home country. I don't think people believe that. And so we need to anticipate that we are going to communicate with federal authorities when the 80% of those applications are anticipated to be rejected. And so that's the important piece of why the Trust Act has to be repealed, because as these asylum seekers have their day in court, if they show up, 80% of those will not be found to have asylum granted. The schools is also very important because, Governor Pritzker and the Democrats aren't talking about the impact on the classroom sizes, the local property tax, some of the highest in the state. They're not talking about having to find non-English speaking teachers or that can speak a second language, ESL teachers. They're not talking about that issue and the impact that it's having and the pressure that's having on our property taxes, because local property taxpayers are going to foot this bill for the migrant crisis that are coming. We're seeing in the city of Freeport, Rockford, they're writing about this issue. They're seeing a significant uptick. And then healthcare. As we've noticed, the best plans that J.B. Pritzker provides are for illegal immigrants. And so we have a couple solutions. I think our hope is that they're going to have traveler's remorse and that the migrants are going to return to their home country. There's proud sanctuary states. Governor Pritzker has talked out both sides of his mouth. I don't understand why he is surprised, that people are wanting to come here and that other governors are sending migrants here. They're doing exactly what J.B. Pritzker campaigned on, right? That's what he has asked them to do, to be a welcoming, empathetic state. But we're seeing the impact of that in every community. And then if you take a look at the temporary shelters, they're putting them in some of the poorest areas in the state. They're not putting these in Lincoln Park or the Gold Coast where the governor and the Democrat donors are. They're putting them where the resources are already very scarce. And that's by design, because the governor doesn't really care. He doesn't care about the migrants. He wouldn't put them in Lincoln Park. Puts them in the poorest of the poorest in the south side of Chicago, where the resources are already spread thin. And so we need to take away the incentives and the welcome mat in this state. And when we do that, what we're going to see is a realignment, and it shouldn't be a controversial issue, that we want to put people that are legal Illinois citizens first. That shouldn't be a controversial issue. We have single mothers that need help. We have elderly, disabled, those that fall in the cracks that can't quite get the government health care that they need, just make a few extra bucks, knowing that an illegal immigrant, a migrant, no copays, best health care you can get, best education you can get, driver's license, legal services. The governor has campaigned on this issue, Democrats have campaigned on this issue, but they won't put the migrants, in most cases, in their communities. You don't see the progressive Democrats that represent wealthy areas ever say, put a temporary shelter here. They always say we need to address the issue as long as it's not where they're at, because it shows where their heart is. They really don't want to address the issue. And they want to say they're a welcoming state, all while they're trying to make it more and more difficult for migrants to come here, which we would agree. But they're talking out both sides of their mouth because Governor Pritzker could hold the Biden administration accountable. The Democrats could put on the pressure to secure our border and to reinstate the stay in Mexico policy on the federal level, but they won't do it. So we'll just open this up to questions.